Well, here we go. The build-up to the World Cup. You got 6 days. The rosters have been selected. At the time of recording this, Mexico hasn't quite been confirmed. We have a good idea what that's going to be like. The players have played their last games, all of them, and are already in Qatar or on their way to Qatar here. And there are going to be games played as soon as this Sunday. So whether you're ready or not, it's time. Unbelievable. No one's really quite ready. How could you ever be prepared for what lies ahead? And that's the beauty of this 2022 World Cup. With all the ugliness that is going to be attached with it, the beauty is this unexpected nature of what we are going to see, where without any real anticipation, because we haven't had time to build it, it's going to hit us squarely in the face. So embrace it. We are ready to rock. And specifically here, if we've talked about the United States, why not predict how they are going to fare in specifically the group stages in Qatar? And while we're at it, we will also take a look at the other 3. I think that's the great news. The other 3 CONCACAF World Cup teams that will be competing here this November and December. And I am predicting it to be a pretty successful one for these 4 entries, and maybe more successful collectively than anyone anticipated. So here today on the Soccer OG, yep, there it is. Read 'em and weep. The daily simulcast that you will see of the Soccer OG podcast simulcast on my YouTube under Max Bretos starting November the 19th and going through the entire World Cup till its conclusion. It is going to be a fun program where you can chime in to get all the latest news, previews, predictions, gambling tips, you name it, special guests. There it is, and it's going to be here. And as you can imagine, it's be quite the undertaking, but we're really exciting. So check out the Soccer OG World Cup daily every day through the World Cup. Check out the Soccer OG podcast where all podcasts are available. Like and subscribe us here on YouTube. So let's go through it. Let's start with the United States. And let's not talk about who isn't there anymore. It is what it is. And we saw the very difficult moments from Mark McKenzie and Paul Arriola, and we heard from Ricardo Pepi, who's apparently taken it very well. He scored a goal this weekend. And we can't really get into that. We're focusing on what it is and the 26 guys that will be there for Greg Berhalter. The United States are in Group B. As you know, they open up with the Welsh on November 21st. November 25th, they have England, and wrap it on the 29th against Iran. In the case of the United States, and we'll talk about it for Mexico, and I imagine to a lesser degree Canada, the first game is the biggest game, because that is the team that most people feel they are competing for a spot for second place. The United States with Wales, I'm not overlooking Iran for any reason, and the Mexican case versus Poland. So first with the United States. Wales is a team that is going for their first World Cup in over half a century. We think about Gareth Bale, but they are more talented than that. A lot of Premier League and English-based players. This is, a really benchmark moment for Welsh sports, known as a rugby country. Now, I think we're seeing it become more of a soccer country, which we expected it to happen, because they've thrust themselves ahead of all the other British teams, like Scotland, Northern Ireland, and not in British, but Ireland as well. Wales is the second team from that area of the world in the World Cup, behind the English. And we know how they play, counter-attacking team, and I think with Gareth Bale and Daniel James, you have 2 incredible counter-attacking weapons. But do we see a different Wales team in this World Cup, especially against the United States? I imagine we will. I think they're going to be a little more aggressive and a little more go forward, a little more controlling of the game. So that said, they don't have the talent that the U.S. has. The U.S. also does have the edge in FIFA ranking-wise, what has been classified as the group of death. They have the slight edge over Wales and Iran. And it's hard to see it any other way. You get a result, you win this Wales game, you are in like Flynn. And I don't want to keep ignoring the England game because we've seen the England roster, and it's a flawed team. It's a flawed team, and we talk about cycles for so many of these squads. And the English have done a very good job of incorporating some of the young players in recent years. This team has seen Phil Foden, Bukayo Saka, and Jude Bellingham become a bigger part of it. But they still have that core group that they've leaned in and they've peppered away in these World Cup and Euros with success. You know, Harry Kane and Harry Maguire, some of these guys that are kind of, you know, they've had a couple shots at it. And generally, you don't get that many shots. So I think the United States can certainly get something out of England. I feel more confident about that today than I did a month ago or when we were doing this a year ago. The truth. But that really comes down to that first game. And by the way, we sat here and talked about the health of the United States, that there's no way they were going to be in 100% health. And they're not in 100% health, but they're pretty close to it. I mean, Chris Richards and Miles Robinson long-term and a couple others, but Gio Reyna, Christian Pulisic, those two, they're there. They made it. You know, Weston McKennie didn't play with Juventus. We expect him to play some way, but they've got some options there, exciting options. You could not have asked for this good of a health record for the U.S. They got a lot going for them. And I feel confident that this team can make the round of 16, and on my preliminary prediction, I have them in the quarterfinals. This is a World Cup that's going to classify to some odd results. And whether it's United States, I think Wales or Iran, whoever gets through has a shot to make the final 8. And when I made predictions, I try to stay away from too many European teams getting through because I don't think it's going to favor the European teams, although it's hard to resist because there's so many good European teams. So the Wales is one thing. The English isn't the glowing English team we've seen in the last competitions. And then Iran, which everyone's going, don't underestimate them. And we're trying not to. You know, you got Taremi and Sadar Azmoun and Can Nihash, with these guys that a lot of exciting players, top European leagues. But remember, they had a weird finish. I mean, they were a chaotic finish to what they were doing in the national level. Remember, they had their coach Dragan Skokic, and then he won 15 of 18 games. But then they didn't like the way stylistically he was playing, and he was forced out. Carlos Queiroz comes in, who was the manager for the last 2 times that they qualified for the World Cup. Yeah, that's worked. And by the way, when Queiroz has been in the World Cup, this is a team that hasn't played very positive football, which I think is a mistake. I think they have the players to play a positive style. Will Carlos Queiroz do that? Who does know this U.S. player system very well? I don't know if he does it. He had success playing that negative brand. In 2018, they scored 2 goals. They almost got through to the round of 16. They weren't pressing the tempo at all in what was a very tough group. I don't think they pressed the tempo here as well. And if the U.S. get that early result, it plays in their favor. I like the Iran matchup for the United States. Not because of the players, but because of the coaching, because of the disarray that kind of saw them at the back end of qualifying. There were canceled games. Remember the game against Canada? So question marks. And all that favors the U.S., who doesn't have that as much. So that is what I see from the United States. We'll get much more into the details of what is capable, but I feel very good about it. I think they have a positive spin on all 3 games, and certainly in a round of 16 game. So get excited. I know some people are, and I know some people aren't. And it may not turn out well, but get excited. Quickly, let's go through the other CONCACAF teams. Mexico is in Group C. Their most important game is against Poland, and they have Argentina and Saudi Arabia. If they beat Poland, that should get them through. And the storyline on Mexico at World Cups is that the quinto partido, they never get to the quarterfinals. They are consistent about not getting to the quarterfinals. You know what they are consistent at, though, as well? Making the round of 16. They were suspended or they were disqualified from the tournament in 1990. Every competition, I think that's 7 World Cups since, they have made the round of 16. The beautiful thing, and you don't want to be too naive about it, but the beautiful thing about the World Cup is you will see things in countries like art imitating life. The way certain countries are is reflected in the World Cup. whether it's Germany or Brazil, it all kind of comes into view because of the way that country is. And part of the identity for Mexico is that don't have what it takes to get to the quarterfinals, but they do to the round of 16. So why wouldn't you believe that they would make the round of 16 here? Because a lot of people don't think they will, even though they are the highest ranked FIFA team, I think, or if it's Senegal, not from Europe or South America. They have a really good profile. I think they beat Poland, who have been pretty disappointing in major competitions. In 2020, 2 losses and a tie in the Euros. They were last in that group in the last World Cup. Lost to Colombia and Senegal. They beat Japan in the end, but they were out of it. Robert Lewandowski, he's great, but he's 34. He's had a few shots at this. But I think their best window was certainly 2018. That was a team that I think should have gotten through. And in 2016, where they did do well in the Euros, I think they're on the back end. It's good for Mexico, who aren't fully loaded. Obviously, Tecatito, and they have Chucky. Raul Jimenez isn't right. They just need some goals from whomever that is. That could be Henry Martin or Funes Mori. I don't know who's going to score those goals. Alexis Vega. Somebody's got to do it. It may not be pretty, but I think Mexico has a situation where I think they'll play Argentina well. They also do that in the groups. We saw that against Brazil in 2014. We saw that against Germany in 2018. They never really get outmatched or classed in the group stages. So I don't think it's going to happen here with a really, just for all the criticisms we have, a really good season manager, World Cup veteran manager, who's taken teams very far in Tata Martino. This is why they brought him in. This is why Tata is there, because what he can do at the World Cup. So even though there's been a bumpy ride and there's injuries, Mexico should get there. And I think they have a good matchup as well in the round of 16. So again, that's 2 teams from CONCACAF I see getting to the knockout stages because they're favored to, really. The Vegas numbers say they should. Go with Vegas. They're pretty right about these things. So Mexico, first game like the U.S. is key. We'll see what they can do. Canada, they just announced their roster. They're in Group F. They open up with Belgium. It's not a must-win because Belgium is one of the top teams, favorites of the World Cup. Then they play Croatia. Then they play Morocco. Very, very difficult group. I think Belgium is ripe for a result against Canada. When I've seen Canada, who've also had a bumpy ride, they were supposed to play Iran. That game got canceled. Some other games got canceled. They played Bahrain recently with a split squad, and that didn't go great. But, Alphonso Davies is not 100% healthy, but he's there, ready to go. You look at all the talented offensive players. This team's going to get after it. This team is going to score goals, and I think they're going to catch some people off guard. It's not just Alphonso Davies. Jonathan David, obviously, very good profile. Tejan Buchanan, Kyle Larin, Steven Eustachio, all 3 of those guys made it to the round of 16 of the Champions League and played a big role. Kyle Larin, not so much, but the other 2, yes. And then Ismael Kone is coming along. Defensively, they might be in a couple 3-2 or 4-3s, but I think they pull a big upset. I'm not sure if they go through, but they're going to be a thorn in the side of everyone in that group. And I think Morocco could be the best African team. They just got unlucky that they're in this group. Croatia, very impressed with Croatia, but after making it in the final, they're not going to surprise anybody. And 4 years older for some of that main core group of guys, Modric, Perisic, of that nature. Canada's not going to be outmatched in these. Talent-wise, they have some of the best players in certain positions. 11 players from MLS. And many people look at the league as a reason why the U.S. are handicapped. It's not the right way to look at it. MLS has been fantastic. It's been good for the U.S., not just with some of the players that made the World Cup here, but some of the players on the U.S. team that started in MLS that have moved on. Brendan Aronson, Tyler Adams, Joe Scally, to name a few. Canada's got that too. So MLS is going to be well represented. Canada has a shot here to make the round of 16. I just don't know. I think they fall a little short, but they're going to be in that final match day doing some scoreboard watching, I can assure you. So that's very exciting for Canada, who I saw them play Uruguay in the September games. They lost 2-0, but they look better than Uruguay to me. They look better, and people think Uruguay is a semifinalist. I'm not so sure about Uruguay. We'll talk more about that in other shows. Then they beat the host team, Qatar. Canada looks good. Canada's going to give it a run. Finally, Costa Rica. And Costa Rica, they looked like they had no shot of making the World Cup, but they did. They got hot in CONCACAF, and then they beat New Zealand in the playoff. So they're not supposed to be here. They're here almost every time. They will play in, Group E. They open up with Spain. This group is gnarly. Spain, Japan, Germany. Remember, Japan was a knockout stage team. Looked great against the U.S. So this is like a tournament that I think was unexpected, but they'll give it a run. A lot of those old players, Celso Borges and Brian Ruiz, still going strong. Great goalkeeper, Keylor Navas, who will wipe away some mistakes. Joel Campbell scoring. A few young players that will come through. The Ticos, even, they made the quarterfinals in 2014. They didn't win a game in 2018, but they lost to Serbia 1-0. There was a late goal there. Then they lost to Brazil 2-0, and then they tied the Swiss. So they were not outranked in any way. And I think they'll have a better tournament here. It just won't see the round of 16. But man, again, they'll get something out of this group. This is going to be a really good World Cup for CONCACAF. I think the fact they have 4 teams as opposed to 3 is a great clue of that. And 4 teams that have all had, well, without Canada, we don't know, but the other teams have had some sort of success in recent World Cups, as in making the round of 16. All of them made it in 2014, Mexico in 2018. So CONCACAF is the 3rd best region when it comes to World Cup play when you look at success of their teams, certainly recently. And I think they take a good step here. USA and Mexico make the round of 16. USA makes the quarterfinals. Canada gets close, and Costa Rica also will be in there at the end. What do you think? How will the CONCACAF teams fare? How do you think the USA will fare? Am I a little bit too optimistic? Leave us a comment here on social media. The Soccer OG podcast, for all podcasts available. Check that out. The World Cup Daily coming on the 19th. And like and subscribe here. I don't know if we're ready for it, but we got no choice. The World Cup is at our doorstep. Bring it on.